Hi, my name is Sarah and I'm 38 years old. I've been married to my husband David for over a decade now. Together, we've built a life in a quiet suburban neighborhood that feels like a little corner of the world all our own. It's the kind of place where people wave to each other as they walk their dogs or sit on their porches in the evenings. There's a sense of comfort in it, all predictable, reliable. David works as a corporate lawyer and I'm a part-time graphic designer. We've managed to find a balance between the hustle of work, family, and everything in between. We have 2 kids, Emily and Jack. Emily is 10, full of life and energy, always ready with a question or an observation that makes me laugh. Jack, on the other hand, is 14, and at that age where he's becoming more independent. I've been a stay-at-home mom for the most part, and while I do work a few hours a week from home, I'm here for the kids, making dinner, helping with homework, and trying to stay involved in every little thing that's going on in their lives. Truth is, my life has been comfortable, simple, but not without meaning. When David and I decided to start a family, we chose this neighborhood because it felt like the right place to raise our children safe, peaceful, surrounded by other families who shared our values. There's a certain beauty in simplicity, and for the most part, I've embraced it. There are moments when I get a little restless, when I wonder if there's more out there, but then I remind myself that this is where I belong. And there's so much joy in the routine that sometimes it's hard to imagine a life without it. David's brother Tom has always been a part of our lives. He's 5 years older than David, and they've always had a close relationship. Growing up, Tom was the quieter one, the more reserved brother, while David was always the life of the party, the one everyone gravitated toward. Even as adults, they've remained close, and it's been nice to have Tom around over the years. He doesn't live far, about 30 minutes away, so it's not uncommon for him to drop by for dinner or come to family gatherings on holidays. Always been a good uncle to the kids, and even though he's more private than David, I've never minded his company. At first, I didn't think much of Tom's visits. He was just family, David's older brother, someone I had always welcomed into our home without a second thought. He was pleasant enough, respectful, and he usually kept to himself, but he also had a certain charm to him. He wasn't the kind of guy who demanded attention, but when he spoke, you listened. He was someone who preferred deep conversations to small talk, which I respected, though sometimes it made me wonder how David and Tom had grown up in the same house, given how different they were. But over the past year, something had begun to change. It wasn't anything overt at first, just little things I started to notice, little shifts in the way Tom interacted with me. At family dinners, he would sit a little closer than usual, his hand brushing against mine as he passed the bread basket, or his smile lingering just a bit too long when he complimented me on something, whether it was my cooking or a new dress I'd worn. His words, though always polite, began to feel heavier, like there was more to them than just casual conversation. I tried not to think too much about it. After all, Tom was family. What could possibly be wrong with that? But when David wasn't around, I began to notice other things, how Tom would look at me a little longer than necessary, or how his tone would shift when he talked to me, as if he was speaking to someone else entirely, not just his brother's wife. And sometimes, when we would be in a group, I'd catch him looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, his eyes lingering just a bit too much. The intensity in them making me feel a little uncomfortable. It wasn't anything blatant, nothing that could be considered inappropriate in a direct sense. But there was a tension in the air, a subtle undercurrent that I couldn't ignore. Every time he was around, I found myself becoming more aware of his presence, how he moved around the room, how his gaze would shift to me when I wasn't looking. It felt like something had changed, but I couldn't tell if it was me overthinking it or if he was behaving differently. The worst part was that it made me question myself. Was I imagining this? Had Tom always acted this way, and I just never noticed? Or had he started to look at me differently, to see me in a way that I wasn't prepared for? It wasn't something I had ever considered before, and the more I tried to push the thoughts away, the more they seemed to linger. It was as though something unspoken had shifted between us, and I couldn't figure out what it was or why it made me so uncomfortable. The problem was that, as much as I didn't want to think about it, I couldn't shake the feeling that Tom was watching me too closely. It wasn't just when we were alone, either. It was in the small moments when we were with the kids, or when David and I were talking about something, and I'd glance over to see Tom watching me, his expression unreadable. I wondered if anyone else saw it, or if it was just me. Was I reading too much into it, or was there something more to his behavior? But I wasn't ready to talk to David about it. What would I even say? Hey, I think your brother might be looking at me differently. No, that didn't make sense. It didn't feel like something I could put into words, at least not without sounding paranoid or accusing. So, I kept it to myself, bottling up the growing unease that came with each passing encounter. And then, one evening, when David had to go out of town for work, Tom came over for dinner. It was supposed to be a quiet night, just the three of us, me and the kids, with Tom stopping by as he often did. But something felt different this time. Tom seemed more intense, more present in a way that I couldn't quite put my finger on. He stayed longer than usual, helping with dinner, and when we sat down to eat, his gaze lingered on me more than it had in the past. It wasn't overt nothing that screamed uncomfortable, but it was enough to make me pause. The night passed uneventfully, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Tom's presence had been different. I noticed the way he would lean in when he spoke, the way his voice softened when addressing me. And when he left, after a brief hug goodbye, I found myself standing by the door, my mind racing. Something had shifted, and I wasn't sure if I had just imagined it, or if there was something real behind it. It wasn't until a few days later, when I received a message from Tom, that I realized things had changed more than I thought. And that was when the real conversation began. The days after that strange dinner with Tom were filled with an uncomfortable quietness. My mind kept drifting back to those moments, the way he had looked at me a little too long, the small gestures that felt more personal than they should have been. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting in our dynamic, something that I didn't fully understand but couldn't ignore. It wasn't just about his actions. It was about how they made me feel unsettled, confused, and unsure of how to react. I tried to push it out of my mind. Life carried on. David was still away for work, and I was juggling the usual routine, taking care of the kids, managing the household, and trying to keep everything in balance. But in the back of my mind, the question remained, was I overreacting? Or had Tom really started seeing me differently? One night, a few days after that dinner, I found myself scrolling through my phone, sitting on the couch after the kids had gone to bed. I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary, but I received a text message from Tom. The words were simple, but they struck me like a bolt of lightning. Hey Sarah, I hope you're doing okay. I've been thinking about our conversation the other night. I know it was a little awkward, but I think I owe you an explanation. I don't want things to be weird between us, and I think it's important to clear the air. I stared at the screen for a long moment, my heart pounding. What did he mean by clear the air? My stomach twisted into knots. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it altogether, to just let things be, to pretend nothing had happened. But the other part of me knew I couldn't just leave it unresolved. Not when Tom had essentially opened a door to a conversation that I wasn't sure I was ready to have. I took a deep breath and typed back, trying to keep my response casual. I think it's fine, Tom. No need to worry. We're family, and things don't have to be awkward. I hit send, but before I could put my phone down, another message popped up. This time, the words came faster, almost like he was waiting for my reply. I'm not sure if I can just let it go like that. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Sarah, I need to be honest. I've been carrying some feelings for a while, and I can't pretend like everything is normal anymore. I'm sorry if this makes you uncomfortable, but I think you need to know how I feel. My heart skipped a beat. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The words I had feared had finally been spoken. Tom wasn't just being friendly or offering a casual compliment. He had feelings for me, and it was clear now that this wasn't just a passing thought. My mind raced, and I felt a cold sweat forming at the back of my neck. I quickly typed a response, my fingers shaking as I tried to control my panic. Tom, this isn't right. You're my husband's brother. You need to stop. We need to put a stop to this before it goes any further. I paused, waiting for him to reply. My stomach twisted into knots and my hands felt clammy. I stared at my phone, anxiously waiting for him to respond. Finally, the message came through. I understand if you're upset, Sarah, but I had to be honest. I know I can't change how I feel, but I can't ignore it either. I don't expect you to feel the same, but I couldn't go on pretending like everything was normal between us. Please just think about it. I read his words over and over, feeling the weight of them settle deep into my chest. How could this be happening? How could Tom, the brother I had always seen as family, feel this way? And how was I supposed to deal with it? I sat there for what felt like hours, my thoughts a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and anger. The one person I had trusted, someone I had always considered safe, was now making me feel like I was caught in a web of unspoken desires, expectations, and guilt. I loved my husband, David. He was the center of my world, the father of my children, and the man I had built my life with. The thought of betraying him, of even entertaining the possibility of something more with Tom, made me sick to my stomach. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't confront Tom about this over text. I couldn't let this linger. But I also knew that confronting him directly, in person, would be a whole different challenge. There was so much at stake: my marriage, my family, my peace of mind. The rest of the night, I didn't sleep. My mind raced, replaying every moment with Tom that had felt strange, every smile, every lingering glance. Had I missed the signs? Had he always felt this way, and I just hadn't noticed? Or had this all come out of nowhere? My heart was heavy with the knowledge that something had shifted, and I wasn't sure if I could go back to the way things were. The next day, I found myself in a constant state of tension. Every time my phone buzzed, I half expected another message from Tom. Every time I saw him, I felt a strange mix of guilt and fear. What was I supposed to do? How could I keep this secret from David? Or worse yet, should I even tell him? I kept my distance from Tom over the next few days, unsure of how to handle things. I tried to focus on my family, but my mind kept wandering back to the texts. I couldn't shake the feeling that the boundaries between Tom and me had been crossed, that there was no going back. Every time I saw him at family gatherings or when we ran into each other at the store, the air felt thick with unspoken words, with everything that had been left unsaid. And then, one evening, when David was away on a business trip, Tom texted me again. "We need to talk, Sarah. I can't keep pretending like nothing happened. I want to see you tonight. Please." This was it. The moment I had been dreading. I couldn't avoid it any longer. I knew that I had to make a decision, to confront him and figure out what to do next. There was no easy way out of this. I was caught in a situation I hadn't asked for, a situation I never saw coming, and now I was going to have to face it. Head dash on dot, my mind was a whirlwind as I composed a response. But even as I typed, I felt a part of me wondering if this was the beginning of something I would regret for the rest of my life. Tom, we need to talk. But we can't do this anymore. I'm married. This isn't right. I need you to respect that. I hit send, and the moment the words left my phone, I felt the weight of them settle over me. There was no turning back now. The conversation would happen, and I had to face the reality of the situation, no matter how difficult it might be. What had started as an uncomfortable shift in our relationship was now a full-blown mess, one that I couldn't untangle without hurting someone. And I didn't know what the outcome would be. But I knew one thing. Things between Tom and me would never be the same again. The days that followed the text exchange with Tom felt like I was living in a fog. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would race and I'd hesitate before looking at it. The messages were still coming in, but I was finding it harder and harder to keep a clear head. I had told Tom in no uncertain terms that I wasn't going to entertain anything further, but the guilt and anxiety of confronting him about his feelings weighed on me. I had promised myself that I wouldn't let things escalate, but deep down, I knew the truth. The boundaries had already been crossed. David was away for a business trip, and the house felt eerily quiet. I tried to keep busy with the usual routines, getting the kids to school, preparing meals, running errands, but every task felt like a distraction from the growing tension in the air. Tom's words kept echoing in my mind. I can't keep pretending, like nothing happened. I need to see you tonight. What had I gotten myself into? How had everything shifted so suddenly? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had ignored the little signs for so long. Tom's lingering glances, the way he leaned in a little too close when we spoke, the way his compliments had become more personal over time. I hadn't seen it at first, hadn't wanted to see it, but now that it was out in the open, I couldn't stop replaying every interaction, every moment. The worst part was that Tom wasn't just a distant family member anymore. He was a man with intentions, and those intentions had crossed a line. I couldn't pretend like nothing had happened. I had to face this, but how? How could I confront the situation without making everything worse? I couldn't go to David, not yet. If I did, the consequences would be catastrophic. It would tear apart our family. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to deal with that fallout. And yet, I couldn't keep hiding from the truth. The silence between Tom and me grew unbearable. I didn't know what to say or what to do next. I avoided him as much as possible, making excuses to David whenever Tom wanted to drop by the house. But it felt like the more I pushed him away, the more the tension built. It was only a matter of time before the truth came crashing down. I knew that Tom had to be confronted. I had to make sure that boundaries were set, but I wasn't sure how to do it without causing irreparable damage. That evening, I received another message from Tom. This time, it was a simple text, but it felt like a nail in the coffin of my attempts to avoid him. Please, Sarah. I don't want to hurt you. I just need to talk. I'll be at the house tonight. Let's clear the air. I stared at the message, my breath catching in my chest. He was already planning on coming over, and I knew I couldn't keep avoiding him forever. I had to face him. I had to confront whatever this was before it escalated any further. My hands were shaking as I typed out a response. I'm not sure this is a good idea, Tom. Please respect what I said. We can't keep doing this. I hesitated before hitting send, but I knew there was no going back now. I had drawn the line, but I wasn't sure if he would respect it. I couldn't make him understand how serious this was, unless I showed him the gravity of the situation. When David called that evening, I was already on edge. I had been avoiding his calls earlier, too wrapped up in my own thoughts and the mounting tension with Tom. But now, as I saw his name on the screen, I realized I couldn't keep this from him forever. He deserved to know, and I couldn't hide behind the pretense of normalcy any longer. "Hey, babe." David's voice came through the phone, sounding calm and comforting, but I couldn't ignore the way my pulse quickened. "How's everything going? The kids all right?" "Yeah," I replied, my voice tight. "Everything's fine. Just, the usual." I tried to sound normal, but it felt like a lie. I wasn't sure how to even approach this with him. I didn't want to hurt him, but at the same time, I couldn't avoid the truth any longer. "Is everything really fine?" David's voice softened, sensing the change in my tone. "You sound off. What's going on, Sarah?" My heart raced. Should I tell him now? Should I just lay it all out? Risk everything and deal with the consequences of my actions? Before I could say anything, there was a knock at the door. My breath caught in my throat. I looked toward the door, my stomach churning with anxiety. Tom had come. "I'll call you back, David," I said quickly, my voice already strained with the stress of the moment. "I need to take care of something. I'll talk to you soon." I hung up before he could respond, my heart pounding in my ears. Tom was at the door, and there was no turning back. I stood there for a moment, frozen. I knew I had to face him, but I didn't know what was going to happen next. My mind was racing, my body tensed with the anticipation of what was coming. Slowly, I walked to the door and opened it. There he was, standing on the porch, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his expression unreadable. He looked like he was trying to appear calm, but I could see the nervous energy in the way he shifted. On his feet. For a moment there was silence between us, and I felt the weight of everything hanging in the air. "Sarah," he said quietly, his voice a little strained. "I didn't know how else to do this, but I need you to hear me out." I stepped back, allowing him to enter the house, but my mind was already racing with thoughts of what I needed to say. As he walked in, I could feel the space between us shift. It wasn't just the physical distance that had grown, but the emotional distance. Everything felt heavier now, like we were standing on the edge of something that neither of us could control. "What's going on, Tom?" I asked, my voice shaky but firm. "You need to understand. This isn't just some casual thing. You're my brother-in-law. Your family. This has to stop." Tom took a deep breath, his eyes meeting mine. "I know I crossed a line," he said quietly, "but I couldn't ignore how I felt anymore. It's been eating at me, and I didn't want to make things worse. But I needed you to know. I can't pretend like I don't feel this way about you." I stared at him, my mind spinning. His words didn't make sense. How could this be happening? How could someone I trusted, someone I had known for so long, look at me this way? My chest tightened as I tried to keep my emotions in check, but I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. "You need to respect my boundaries, Tom," I said, my voice low and unwavering. "This can't continue. You need to walk away from these feelings. This isn't just about us. This is about my marriage, about David. You're my husband's brother, and this is where I draw the line." Tom's face softened, but there was still a sadness in his eyes. "I don't want to hurt you, Sarah. I never wanted to come between you and David, but I can't change how I feel. And I'm not asking you to feel the same way, but I needed you to know." I shook my head, my heart breaking at the realization of what was happening. "Tom, I love David. He's my husband, and I'm not going to let this destroy my family. We have to stop this now." The silence that followed was heavy, like the air had become thick with tension and unspoken truths. Tom nodded slowly, as if he understood, though there was an undeniable sadness in his eyes. "I'll stay away, Sarah," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "But I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just needed to be honest." He turned to leave, and as he walked out the door, I couldn't help but feel the weight of what had just transpired. This wasn't something I could forget. It was something that had changed the dynamic of our family forever. And while I had set the boundaries, while I had confronted Tom and made it clear that this couldn't continue, I wasn't sure if I could ever fully go back to the way things were before. As I closed the door behind him, I stood there in the quiet of my house, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. The world felt different now, and I wasn't sure how to move forward. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again.